Beyond Science put out a video in 2017 titled 5 Clues Humans Actually Coexisted with Dinosaurs. Link in the description. Yeah, this is going to be rough, so let's jump right in. If you've watched my dinosaur evolution series, then you probably know my answer to the question of whether humans coexisted with dinosaurs. It's a resounding no. However, this video by Beyond Science... Beyond Science... BS. Anyway, BS claims to have evidence that humans and dinosaurs did indeed coexist. But before we jump into the video, I must make a note for the pedants out there. Yes, birds are dinosaurs. I'm referring only to the non-avian dinosaurs when I say dinosaurs for the purposes of this video. Now, on to the content of the video. We can skip the first 1 minute 15 seconds of the video because BS basically just lays out what scientists understand about when dinosaurs lived and when humans first evolved. Nothing odd there.
And although many people believe that it's impossible for humans and dinosaurs to have coexisted,
no, it's not at all impossible that humans and dinosaurs coexisted. Evolution doesn't dictate that certain creatures must be extinct. It's just the fact that some are, and most of the time there's clear evidence for their disappearance at certain points in Earth's history. It's simply extremely unlikely that dinosaurs coexisted with humans due to the positive evidence in favor of that conclusion. If dinosaurs turned up in Pleistocene or Holocene strata, then we'd have to seriously rethink the evolution of dinosaurs following the Mesozoic. Don't hold your breath on that, though.
there has been clues from fossils, paintings, ancient sculptures, and more that tells a slightly different story, implying that humans did in fact interact with these ginormous lizards.
Again, no, there's no evidence from fossils or art that dinosaurs and humans coexisted. We're going to address the examples BS just brought up because he doesn't ever return to them. They're just put out there with no context. That first picture of an alleged human footprint next to a theropod track supposedly comes from Paluxy River in Glen Rose, Texas. Now, the Paluxy River is actually interesting because of its assemblage of Middle Cretaceous dinosaur tracks. But some creationists, such as Carl Bonney and Juby, have been trying for years to convince people that human footprints are right alongside those dinosaur ones. This has been a laughable failure, even among other creationists, including John Morris, Answers in Genesis, and Creation.com. The last source even notes with regard to the tracks, quote, "The anatomical ratios when compared to modern humans are not at all convincing," close quote. Now, the track BS shows is especially interesting in that, for one thing, there's only one picture of it anywhere. The picture doesn't show up in any technical sources and isn't even really noticed by people who usually counter creationist cryptozoology, such as Glenn Kubin or Trey the Explainer. It does, however, show up in dozens of blogs by creationists and conspiracy theorists. But why is having only one picture of this thing a red flag? Well, researchers have taken a number of pictures of the other tracks, but curiously not this one. In my own experience, when I interned at the LSU Department of Mammalogy, we once had some whale experts come in to take photos of one of the baleen whale skulls. They took numerous photos of it from every angle, so that they could accurately model it in their own lab, to get a better understanding of it. The opposite has occurred here. Outside of this photo, there's no evidence of the track. I did happen to find one rational person commenting on this track. Peter Jukes at the Motley Moose Archive wrote the 2008 article, Light Relief Palynology, Human Footprints in Dinosaur Tracks, that says, quote, "Don't you just love the way this is done? Whoever carved this is really smart. It shows a rare encounter between a one-legged man limbo dancing under an obliging dinosaur. And the arrows are perfect, just in case you didn't know what you were seeing." Close quote. On to that second item. That's supposed to be a rock carving by some ancient humans of what I guess is supposed to be a sauropod? I say I guess because it doesn't really look like one. Compare this to various other Native American petroglyphs. They were more clear and detailed. This, on the other hand, looks pathetic. It looks nothing like any of the other paintings. This isn't even anatomically accurate. Sauropods didn't look like that. Their long necks and tails were held horizontally for balance. Anyone fooled by this carving doesn't understand sauropod anatomy. And while there are multiple pictures of this carving, it's still the only alleged dinosaur. There are numerous other animals, but only one alleged dinosaur. This underlines the central problem in cryptozoology. There must be breeding populations of these organisms. There can't be just one Loch Ness monster, Bigfoot, Megalodon, or Mokele Mbembe. Where are the populations? However, there are several less dramatic explanations for this, starting with the idea that the artist might have been depicting something else, which meant something else to them, but which modern cryptozoology hunters jump to thinking must be a dinosaur. Random processes of formation, weathering, and erosion allow rocks to exhibit practically infinite shapes and patterns. And because there is a lot of rock out there, it is very likely that some take on shapes that trigger our pareidolia. Many caves are known for their megaliths. Now on to the figurines. These are the Acambaro figures, which were made in Mexico. My friend Tony Reed did a whole video on them in his How Creationism Taught Me Real Science series, link in the description. A number of rigorous scientific studies of these figures concluded that they were made a few decades ago, not a few millennia. And before moving on, let's put these three arguments in perspective. Answers in Genesis doesn't support any of them. Yes, one of the world's largest creationist organizations doesn't stand behind any of these alleged arguments. That should give you a clue as to how bad these arguments really are.
I know this is a super controversial topic,
No, there's no controversy. You're just wrong.
but it's also really interesting. So here are some clues for the coexistence of humans and dinosaurs. Hear it out and make your own decision. One of these clues was found in May of 2012 when the brow horn of a Triceratops was excavated in Dawson County, Montana that was dated to around 33,500 years ago. Triceratops, a name that means three-horned face, is believed to have first appeared during the Cretaceous period around 68 million years ago and became extinct after around 2 million years. The Triceratops brow horn found in Montana was stored at the Glendive Dinosaur and Fossil Museum.
Would that happen to be the same Glendive Dinosaur and Fossil Museum whose homepage says Search Creation and advertises a talk by Eric Hovind? Yes, for those of you wondering, this museum is owned and operated by Otis Klein and other creationists. This fact will become important later in their story. For now though, I'm going to let the video go on for a while to explain the whole event,
which sent a sample of the outer portion of the horn to the paleochronology group in order to carry out carbon-14 dating. The head of the paleochronology group, Hugh Miller, then sent the sample to the University of Georgia for that exact purpose. For those of you who aren't familiar with carbon-14 dating, it's basically the way to find the age of certain artifacts with biological origins up to around 54,000 years old. Carbon-14 was never used to test dinosaur bones in the past because, like I mentioned, it's only reliable up to 55,000 years. But that's only because scientists thought that it was useless to test bones that belonged to creatures that became extinct 65 million years ago. Because of this, methods such as radiometric dating of volcanic layers is typically used to test dinosaur bones, which yielded results that were more based on assumption. It became clear years ago that paleontologists were not just neglecting to test dinosaur bones for C14 content, but were refusing to. After the Triceratops brow horn sample was sent to the University of Georgia for C14 testing, it was divided at the lab into two fractions. One fraction yielded an age of 33,570 plus or minus 120 years, and the other an age of 41,010 plus or minus 220 years. The reason why they split the sample into two fractions was because it reduced the possibility for errors. The C14 test results that came out were not surprising to the paleochronology group because they had carried out the test on dinosaur bones before. All of the results date back to thousands of years instead of millions of years. A model created by the group in 2003 showed that dinosaur bones had C14 that ranged from 22,000 to 39,000 years.
That so-called paleochronology group is a group of creationists working for the Glendive Museum. What a shock. They sent their samples to the University of Georgia for C14 dating. Now, BS mentions the Triceratops horn that was C14 dated, but this, according to Tom Shipley at the Creation Club, was not the only dinosaur fossil to be C14 dated. According to Shipley, the results came back for each specimen where each one was between about 20,000 and 40,000 years old. The paleochronology group then published their finds in a paper titled A Comparison of Delta C13 and PMC Values for 10 Cretaceous-Jurassic Dinosaur Bones from Texas to Alaska, USA, China, and Europe with that of coal and diamonds, and presented the results at the 2012 Western Pacific Geophysics meeting in Singapore. The abstract of the paper was even posted on the meeting's website, but once the results were peer-reviewed and it was determined that the group was merely using the results to push a creationist agenda, the abstract was removed. In response to this, creationists howled that the great Darwinian propaganda machine was silencing them, as Tom Shipley did. It should also be suspicious that the actual paper has never been made available online, which would have allowed people to see whether their protocols were as stringent as their abstract insisted. But, missing that, we can still ask why C14 was found in the fossils at all. Kalalasia writes at rationalskepticism.org, quote, "Another possibility, of course, is that the fossils in question were in a stratum overlaid by a younger stratum containing various radionuclides, and any carbon present in the fossils absorbed neutrons from those radionuclides. But of course, testing for this possibility is one of the elementary steps any competent paleontologist conducts. This is one of the mechanisms by which measurable quantities of C14 can appear in coal seams. The coal underlies a stratum containing radionuclides, some of which are transported into the coal and generate the C14 by well-known processes. The moment one sees measurable C14 in a carboniferous stratum, one should of course look for other dating protocols that are likely not to produce an anomalous result. Failure to account for this in a sample is an immediate red flag for rejection of the paper." Close quote. So, they weren't silenced so much as incompetent creationist researchers. Really, if the researchers at the University of Georgia knew what specimens they were dealing with, then they shouldn't have done C14 dating on the samples in the first place, since the dating involves destroying a portion of the sample. Of course, creationists are going to ignore all of this because they're not interested in truth, but their persecution narrative.
Another discovery came in the form of soft tissue found in dinosaur fossils in March of 2005. According to paleontologist Mary Schweitzer, the soft tissue was discovered inside a 68-million-year-old T-Rex leg bone from Montana. But researchers were able to rehydrate the tissue and prove the existence of blood vessels, blood matrix, and connective tissue. This is really strange because scientists had previously believed that tissue proteins are supposed to degrade in a million years or less, even in the best of conditions, indicating that the bone belonged to a T-Rex that most likely died less than a million years ago.
We've talked about dinosaur soft tissue on this channel before, as in Mark Armitage and We All Have the Same Data and Genesis Paradise Lost, and a number of other YouTubers have as well, such as Paluxy. Creationists have nothing new or useful in this arena, and in this case, BS is unsurprisingly totally wrong. He says researchers, such as Mary Schweitzer, rehydrated, as in applied water to, the ancient soft tissue, which is the protein collagen. But that's factually inaccurate. In reality, something BS isn't on speaking terms with, the researchers removed the mineral phase on the soft tissue with ethylenediamine tetraacetic acid, or EDTA. It's not like the researchers doused the bones in water and blood started spilling out. We must remember the scale upon which all of this is being studied. It's mostly in micrometers. Yes, these soft tissue fragments being studied are literally microscopic, a fact that routinely gets overlooked by the creationists who keep on bringing Schweitzer's work up. And what about their preservation? I mentioned in my talk with Matt Powell that the soft tissue is protected inside bones, which function as essentially concrete tombs. The soft tissue is then not exposed to microbes, water, or any other agents that might degrade it. Schweitzer's research also hypothesizes that metal ions, such as iron, help to stabilize the soft tissue polymers. Also, tiny amounts of hydroxyapatite were recovered from the demineralized samples, which likely contributed to the tissue's preservation as well. And it seems that the hydroxyapatite is further stabilized in the presence of calcite. Thus, we have 3 different preservatives helping to keep the soft tissue intact. In short, none of this research convinced scientists to abandon the old age of the Earth, but it did force them to investigate new methods of long-term preservation, which have only increased our knowledge of the ancient world. And, to put the final touch on this soft tissue matter, I must again point out that creationists ignore all the commonalities that Tyrannosaurus soft tissue shares with that of modern birds. As Schweitzer points out in the 2005 paper, Soft Tissue Vessels and Cellular Preservation in Tyrannosaurus rex, quote, under scanning electron microscopy, features seen on the external surface of dinosaurian vessels are virtually indistinguishable from those seen in similarly prepared extant ostrich vessels, suggesting a common origin, close quote. This research is so conclusive that even Mark Armitage, a creationist, acknowledges in his 2013 paper, Soft Sheets of Fibrillar Bone from a Fossil of the Supraorbital Horn of the Dinosaur Triceratops horridus, that, quote, moreover, Schweitzer et al. 2013 have unequivocally detected affinities for avian collagen-specific antibodies and nucleic acid-specific antibodies in osteocytes recovered from decalcified dinosaur bones. Such affinity is indicative of the presence of avian collagen and nucleic acids in dinosaur tissue, close quote. So, to summarize, BS mischaracterized how the samples were attained and ignored all the data on their preservation. BS is a poor scholar simply repeating creationist nonsense.
What's more, a small ceratopsian dinosaur that lived approximately 70 million years ago was actually carved by the Hongshan culture, a Neolithic culture in northeastern China. The carving was made out of jade and looks exactly like a Montanoceratops.
First, why did you choose Montanoceratops as the supposed fossil representative of this carving? Its name indicates that it didn't live in China. Why not choose, I don't know, Bagaceratops? It at least lived in Mongolia. Second, it's not jade, it's turquoise. Third, my immediate thought when I saw it was that it was a bull. Those clearly look like horns coming out of its head. At the base of the horns is a bulge, making it look like the horns go out and then up, like in modern cows. There's no need to invoke a dinosaur when a bull works just as well. And, unlike the Montanoceratops, the statue has no horn on its nose and no beak. The actual organism had back legs that appeared from the outside to be much larger and taller than the front legs, while the statue's legs are all identical. The tail is all wrong again, but if you trace the photo, then you come to the website Untold Secrets of Planet Earth, which is run by creationist Vance Nelson. Now, aside from a website called Worth Point selling replicas of this carving, Nelson seems to have the only photo of it. Curious. This is another instance of a single photo being held up as conclusive evidence, which it isn't.
In addition, Marco Polo also recorded that he saw a 50-foot reptile in 1100 AD with, quote, jaws large enough to swallow a man and a tail so heavy it left a trail in the sand as if a heavy beam had been dragged across.
Okay, so now we're just relying on the stories of people from the 1200s. That's your argument? Marco Polo claimed to have seen huge monsters whose bodily fluids had magical healing properties, and we're supposed to just accept his word as fact? Really?
There are many more examples of humans and dinosaurs coexisting, from the Ica stones that were carved around 1500s in Peru that show images of dinosaurs.
The Ica stones are fraudulent and not even supported by most creationists. Next.
To the Indian arrowheads found in the late 1800s that were mixed together with iguanodons, duck-billed dinosaurs, ichthyosaurs, and plesiosaurs fossils.
So, I couldn't find any references online to arrowheads being found with fossils of iguanodon, duck-billed dinosaurs, ichthyosaurs, and plesiosaurs. I'm sure BS got this claim somewhere, I just don't know where. Now, the only actual genus he named was iguanodon, so I looked up the known localities for this dinosaur. This dinosaur has been found in, drumroll please, Belgium, Spain, and England, all European countries. Why would arrowheads manufactured by Native Americans be found in Europe? To make things weirder, that duck-billed dinosaur picture is a Parasaurolophus, which has only been found in North America. This whole story doesn't make any sense.
So maybe dinosaurs did not die off as early as we had previously thought, or there may have been a few stragglers that made it through the extinction. So now let me defer the question to you guys. Do you believe that humans at one point coexisted with dinosaurs? Do you believe the Flintstones actually happened? Well, not to that extent, right? And if so, how did they not just eat us all? Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you later.
Do I now believe that dinosaurs coexisted with humans? Absolutely not. Your entire video has been a grab bag of bad arguments with questionable sources. You relied on no technical research and didn't bother to fact-check anything. Your time would be better spent explaining concepts in science to a lay audience, not spreading creationist and conspiracy theorist nonsense. So, Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.